Thanks, Sierra. Appreciate the introduction and good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Capture Cast for December 2021 as we head down into the holiday season. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday. As we go through, today we're going to talk about achieving enrollment goals with a smaller admissions team. And you're a smaller admissions team because you're a smaller outfit, or maybe because you're understaffed at this point in time too. So as we go through, make sure everything works. There we go. I want a reminder that the chat is open, and throughout the day, you are more than welcome to send a message or a question along the way, and we'll answer those at the end. We want to make sure we take good care of your time today, so our goal is to be between 30 and 35 minutes. So, and later today, I'll be joined by Ashley Austin, who is our client trainer, and she's an account executive here at Capture. And then we are really, really super pleased and pumped to welcome Lee Wishing III, who's the Vice President for Student Recruitment at Grove City College in Western Pennsylvania. And Lee is a fantastic leader and will bring us great insights to our conversation. So what we're doing today is we're looking for answers. So having sat on your side of the desk for the last 25 years, I would find myself sitting around the holiday season, looking back and taking a real deep breath, and then really start to focus on what the next 8 months are going to look like, right? So what are we working on, and what's not working for us right now? What changes or outright pivots do we need to make so that you can reach your enrollment goals? I know that I've had more than a few recent conversations with potential clients where they are worried just because the top of the funnel looks really, really good, but as we go through it, they're looking at late melt. So here's some questions that we need to really look at and get some answers to. So the first one is, with a small team, how do you prioritize your outreach? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. How do you prioritize that outreach? How do you make every interaction count with those prospective students? Two, how do you get everyone involved and stop counselor burnout? And that's one thing that we're as a profession, we're really good at doing is burning out our admissions counselors. But how do we combat that? And how do we engage everybody to make sure that they're having a good experience in our offices and getting those wins? I think that's really important to talk about. Three, is there a better way to leverage your tools and partners to achieve your goals? Can you take a step back and figure out a better way to get more out of what you've spent money on, whether it's the data collection, or your partners that you're working with, like Capture, and how do you achieve your enrollment goals working together? And four, is your communication plan dynamic and engaging enough? I think that's a big thing that you would have to really take a look at. But how do you keep students engaged for the next 8 months? A lot of our prospective students have made application. We're going to talk about that in a second. But for the next 8 months, we have to manage melt. So is your communication robust enough? Is it dynamic enough? And is it engaging enough to make sure that you go ahead and earn those enrollments later on? So today's agenda is very simple. We're going to talk a little bit about Capture Higher Ed. We're going to talk about the landscape right now. Then we're going to talk about the importance of having a true partner and what that means. And then we're going to chat with our friends at Grove City, and then we're going to review what we've learned at the end of our time. So when we help our partners strive to make every interaction count by utilizing personalized, data-driven, timely, and measured connections with prospective students, we accomplish this by using the industry's only behavioral intelligence platform. Our behavioral intelligence platform combines marketing automation and predictive modeling to support the entire recruitment cycle, from the time that a student raises their hand, or maybe you purchase their name through a name buy, to when that student actually walks onto your campus in the fall. This helps our partner institutions to identify, convert, and enroll the right students, so now you can only increase your first year enrollment, but in the long run, increase your retention and increase your graduation rates as well. We accomplish this by harnessing the data from our behavioral intelligence platform and advanced predictive models to provide real-time actionable data to our partners. Our team of expert enrollment leaders, marketers, and data scientists help drive our innovative and results-driven outcomes on a day-to-day basis. We're an extension of your enrollment and marketing teams, and don't ever forget that we are a true partnership with you, and we're dedicated to your success here at Capture. So let's talk about the landscape. Well, actually, we're going to do a little poll first. So Sierra, we're going to do the poll now, and we're going to do 2 sample polls, and we're going to give you about 20 seconds in each one. So we're going to open up the first poll, and just to get an idea of where you guys are sitting right now in your offices as you look out there right now. Simple yes or no. Based upon the pre-pandemic staffing levels, are you currently fully staffed? Yes or no? Just let us know. Give us. We'll give you about 20 seconds to fill that out. But I know that there's been a lot of movement. I looked at higheredjobs.com the other day. I wasn't looking for a new job, but getting information about this, there's about 700 different positions in enrollment management out there right now that are just listed on that website alone. So give us an idea, based upon pre-pandemic staffing levels, are you currently fully staffed? So another 5 seconds for those who are inside. About 100 of you are out there, so hopefully you will answer the question. And we'll go ahead and close it. Go ahead and let's see the results. So no. Okay, so 57% of you have said that you are not currently fully staffed. So what's that mean? That means you have a little bit more pressure on, and you're asking more people to do more things. And if you're a really decent leader, you've taken on more of things like that as well on your own plate. So you know, it's something that we have to work on. It's something that we're dealing with not only in higher education, but in all sectors of the workforce as well. So let's pop into the second poll there, Sierra. And the second poll is, how much staff turnover have you had within your enrollment team since January of 2020? So go back to January 2020, before really the pandemic started to kick into gear there. You know, did you not have any turnover? 0 to 10%, 11 to 20%, more than 40%. What we're seeing right now is that a lot of people are re-engaging the workforce, and there are a lot of people who are still sitting out because of COVID and COVID concerns. But there's other reasons as well, whether it would be pay or some you know, working conditions, those kinds of things. I think the number of and the it has to do a lot with how things are going in the workplace right now. So how much staff turnover do we have? Go ahead and let's close up the poll. So a little bit across the board, a little 0 to 10%, and then the next biggest one was more than 40%. Staff turnover is a big deal on our campuses right now. Okay, okay. So as we go through it, as we continue on, we're going to talk about the landscape of what's happening. And a couple quick items to think about. Common App right now is reporting near 2019-2020 application numbers. So applications are cruising in right now through the Common App. Actually, there was something in Forbes earlier today that I saw, was reading through, that says, you know, application numbers are up. There could be some better dividends at the end for yield as we go through it. However, one big thing that was out there that we knew about is that when we compared FAFSA numbers, according to the FAFSA folks, if you look at November 19th versus last year, we're flat. So while we have more students that are applying, it seems like those students haven't done the application for FAFSA yet either. So kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at your funnel. It's great to have great inquiry numbers, applications, acceptances numbers, but are you getting that FAFSA for your undergraduates and even for your graduate programs too? Students are filing those FAFSAs and getting ready to either return to school or to enter school for the first time. So keep that in mind as you're looking at different KPIs. Two, undergraduate enrollment again fell 3.2% this past fall. And then since 2019, the undergraduate enrollment has dropped almost 6.5%. This continues the undergraduate falling off of enrollment for the last decade or so. And it's how institutions are making some pivots and making some changes, not only to budgets at the undergraduate level, but how they are diversifying their portfolios and adding graduate programs and certificate programs to offset some of these losses inside the landscape there. And lastly, lower wage workers have indicated that they're planning to quit their job in the next 3 to 6 months. I was reading on Zippia.com, the average wage for an admissions counselor at the entry level is about $30,000, with a median average across the United States of about $36,000. So that's right around $18 an hour, which is comparable to what the starting wage is now at Amazon. So with most counselors having college loan debt coupled with increasing inflation, we can continue to see movement of our best resources, which is our people, inside enrollment management. And we've known this for a long time, and some colleges and universities have really started to take steps to move along in that. So it really begs the question, how do we as enrollment professionals take on these three items? Roll in the fact that we may not have had, we may have not seen an increase in our budgets this year, and earn that enrollment, so that's desperate, that is so desperately needed, not only for our budgets, but for our future, for our students as well. That's why we're here today, to bring you some clarity and thought leadership on how you can make changes now by using a partner like Capture. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce Ashley. I'm excited that she is here with us, and she's able to bring us some insight. She was a former, as a former director of admissions herself at an institution before joining Capture. So we're going to go ahead and allow Miss Ashley to come in. Ashley, are you there? There you are.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How's everything? Now you're in Louisville, right?
I am in Louisville. It's nice and cold here.
I said Louisville. I said Louisville. My apologies. But no, it's great to see you again, and thanks for joining us. I think what you're going to share with our folks today is really important, and then the conversation with Lee is going to be outstanding. So I will be standing by, and we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Chris, for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Like Chris mentioned, I've been in enrollment management myself. I've sat behind that desk first as an admissions counselor and then as a director of admissions for a small private tech and design campus here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also a certified Dale Carnegie trainer as well, and have been for the past 6 years. So I've trained everyone from admissions counselors to professors, CEOs, and government workers. So it's been really exciting in that role and bringing that into Capture as well. And like I mentioned, I also come from a small admissions staff. I had a staff back in the day of just 3 of us, so super small, and I can understand why we had such a great turnout for today's webinar. So I'm excited to not only share some of my experiences from a small staff, but also some feedback that I'm hearing from partners. And as you know, Capture is well known for being a fully managed service. So along with the experts that you have in your corner at Capture, you can also utilize myself as a client trainer. So I'm essentially the go-to for all of your training needs for any role in the institution, whether it's your counselors, your marketing and data folks, or your enrollment management team as well. So, you know, a little over a year ago, we at Capture uncovered a need to really provide some additional insights and some best practices and additional like educational sessions to help our partners get the most out of our products and solutions. So that's what you use me for, whether it's one-on-one sessions with me, refreshers, anything that you need from me from a training standpoint to get the most out of Capture data is what you can utilize me for. And you can see on the screen here just a few things that I can do as a client trainer is facilitating those educational sessions within the behavioral intelligence platform with your team members, and creating some best practice materials that you can simply pull from within the training library within the BIP as well. And then of course, events like today, those partner-focused webinars, just like we're doing. So not only we can learn more about Capture and how to use it more efficiently, but we can learn from each other as well. So that's why I'm excited that we were able to pull everyone here together today for this session, which will be a first of many, to ensure that we are getting the most out of Capture, but we're learning from others as well. And like I mentioned, I have worked with about 100 of our partners so far. I've trained over 500 of you. So with that being said, I hear a lot from all of you, not only feedback, but you know what you're hearing, what you're seeing and experiencing in the current landscape right now. So let's take a look at some of those pain points. The first being you're doing more with less. Our partners are seeing higher turnovers within the admissions team, and of course needing to do more with less resources and budget as well. You know, hiring, training, and maintaining a happy and productive staff is already difficult, but then you add COVID into the mix and it gets chaotic. So what I'm hearing is how hard it is to, you know, from counselors specifically, to not only be trained with internal processes, but learn how to incorporate other insights, platforms, vendors, things like that into the recruitment process. So basically, how do we do more with less? That really leads into the second point here, preventing that counselor burnout. This is what I hear a lot from counselors, is how can we make sure that our team is productive, but not overwhelm them with their job, especially since they may be using multiple platforms. And I remember when I was a counselor, I would always have, of course, our CRM open. We had a web-based text service that I would have open, email and other various spreadsheets and tabs open. So it got a little messy. So especially too, if your counselors are traveling, they need to know what to prioritize and how to use those resources. If counselors aren't given clear direction or knowledge of the products that you're utilizing, they are sure to burn out, and then therefore they will check out. And then the third point that I'm hearing from partners is just how to keep all of this simple. Sometimes it's a lot of data and insights, which is great, but how do we make it short, sweet, and simple and easy for us to use? So we always say that behavioral data is powerful, but you have to use it. So what our partners really want to know is, what are the most important reports or data points that you need right now at this time to help you with the recruitment cycle. So let's answer some of those questions now by starting first with engage in dynamic content. So we know that your website is one of the best recruitment tools that you will have, and being able to connect and guide your prospective students while they're engaging in real time on your website is so critical. And not only that, being personalized in that messaging is what Gen Z wants to see. So what we're seeing here on this slide is an example of the dynamic content, of course, that pops up for those visitors when they come to the site. And then you have the ability to go into that real-time interactive dashboard, and then you can see which of those identified visitors are not only seeing this content, but interacting with it and engaging with it, right? That can be super helpful for you to tailor your outreach a little bit more effectively. So for example, if you have an open house campaign running on your site right now, and you have several of your identified visitors that are clicking through on that campaign to register for the open house, you can easily pull and download a report to see who's engaging with that campaign, who's taking that call to action, but then who hasn't registered for that open house. There's your next talking point for when your counselor reaches out to those specific students. So the bottom line here is that Engage is working for you 24/7 and interacting with your prospective students just as your counselors would. And that dynamic content that you see here is meeting the prospect where they're at in the cycle and tailoring and personalizing that message based on their website behaviors or of course where they're currently at in the process. So let's take a look. You can see the dynamic content equation here. Identification of those stealth visitors plus influence of dynamic content in other campaigns from capture equals yield success. So let's take a look at some of those metrics that we saw from outcomes of the 2021 year. The first being 8,000 prospective students on average per partner institution that were identified from capture content. The second bullet point is 31% of those prospective students that saw dynamic content as non-applicants went on to apply, compared to almost 3% that saw dynamic content and did not apply. So we're seeing this story unfold here, right? That the more students that are seeing and interacting with content are moving on to apply at a higher rate than those that are not. And that all leads into the end of the cycle, right? 62% of deposited students have engaged and been influenced by our communications so far. And that has resulted in an average for the 2021 year for our partners of a lift of an additional 373 applications and 105 deposits. So pretty powerful stuff here. So don't be afraid to use Engage for that top of funnel assistance. Use those PID forms. We recommend using at least a couple to help with inquiry gen. And get super tailored too with dynamic content to reach those specific students that are coming to your site and engaging, but maybe have to take an action still. So think about, deploying some dynamic content to visitors that haven't yet submitted a FAFSA, or admitted visitors that are on the site and they haven't completed an housing application. So we can get super tailored with the more identifications we can get. So let's break all of this down. Being the client trainer and talking with a lot of you, hearing some of your feedback, I wanted to provide just some short and sweet examples of some things that we can do, especially with having a smaller admissions team. The first being, use those engagement and predictive scores to focus on those most engaged prospects. We typically recommend focusing on those with scores, those behavioral scores of at least 50 or higher, or those 8, 9s, and 10s from the predictive modeling scale. And if you've been a capture client for a little over a year, then I would encourage you to look at your yielded students for the previous year. we had a partner actually that concluded for the 2021 class that over 90% of their yield came from affinity scores of at least 80 or higher. So now they've shifted their focus this year for their recruitment cycle, and they're only focusing right now in the AppGen period on those prospective students with 80 or higher scores, right? So that's a good way of how some of our partners are using our data to kind of shift how they're doing things from an internal process. So especially if you have a large inquiry pool, that's a great tactic. Number two, use your DVRs, or simply just pull that weekly export of all those most recent identified visitors from the past week, and delegate those names out if you can, based on those engagement scores, and prioritize those. We understand you can't get into that daily visitor report every single day. You've got a lot going on. At least pull that a couple times a week, so that way you've got a nice little priority outreach list to focus your efforts on. I also would recommend to really do some outreach to any ambassadors that you currently have, or students that are on a work study. Use those students to help with either outreach or delegating tasks, such as maybe bringing in organic inquiries or any data points. Don't be afraid to look outside of your little home of admissions. I myself, when I was working in admissions, our enrollment goals were not only tied to our admissions team, but to student services and our professors. So everyone had some type of part in that enrollment process when that student applied. So it was more of like a group kind of situation to kind of help and support each other. But also hold your team accountable. Consider incorporating capture inquiry recruitment into your weekly one-on-ones or your group one-on-ones. Use the performance dashboard even better within the behavioral intelligence platform, because we can customize it to show you your counselors' names and their funnel attribution as well if you're sending us that info. So that's a great, nice little dashboard to show your team to see how their students are trickling through the funnel themselves. But I think one of the most important things here is that once your counselors start hearing success stories about these identified visitors, they're more committed to using those additional data and resources. And it really only reiterates the importance of their job, which is ultimately to better the lives of those prospective students. And sometimes we can lose focus of that, right? It can be pretty difficult. But celebrate those small wins when recruitment is being done well, and when we're holding our team accountable to using the data consistently, and we know that they're comfortable using it, they're more apt to use it, they're more bought in, and they're more excited about how to use this data to have some successful outcomes. And then the third point is the power of integration. Being a Slate preferred partner, use that Slate tab within, the capture tab, within Slate, and start creating queries to pull reports into that CRM for your counselors to use within Slate. And then you can also get super tailored too from a communication standpoint, where you can run a query to trigger an email to certain identified visitors with a certain affinity score that have been on the site and is a non-applicant, right? So there's a lot of different creative ways you can do to run some queries and pull some reports. But more so, and more importantly, is keeping your staff within Slate and working within Slate too, as much as you can. And then finally, just pulling in that data on a regular basis. And this is true especially if you don't have an integration set up. Being able to pull in those engagement scores, data points, is especially important for your team to use, but more importantly, communicating what these data points are and why they're important to your team. Once the team understands the why and the outcomes of using this data, like I mentioned, they're more apt to use it. So I did mention earlier that I hear a lot of creative and refreshing ways that our partners are digging deeper into the data without the burnout. So we have a partner here today that Chris mentioned that's going to share with us how they maintain productivity within their team, and we're going to talk to him in just a moment. So if we can go to the next slide, Chris, we'll talk about Grove City. So this is just a little bit about Grove City College. You can see here, Grove City College is located about 50 minutes north of Pittsburgh. They've got a population of approximately 2,300. And I'm super thrilled to welcome Lee Wishing here today. And Lee is the Vice President for Student Recruitment at Grove City. Lee, if you would love to hop in, there he is. And Lee's got the nice little snowy background in the back, being December 1st, going along with the theme here. So Lee, thank you so much for joining us today. Sure. And spending some time with us.
So glad to be here.
Perfectly. Well, tell us just really briefly, tell us how long you've been at Grove City and how long you've been in higher ed.
I've been at Grove City for 27 years, and I've been in higher ed for 27 years. So,
And Lee, tell us a little bit about what your recruitment process looked like, prior to Capture, and what kind of pain points were you previously experiencing?
Well, that's a really good question. So I came into the office 5 or 6 years ago. Grove City had been kind of in a downward, maybe 10, 15 years, steady kind of downward decline in applications, and which, if you know about Grove City, at one point we were, had 4 or 5 applications for every opening, and so my role really was to make sense of what was going on and bring a sales and marketing perspective to it. Prior to my 27 years at Grove City, I was in financial sales, and I owned and ran businesses. So they wanted me to kind of bring that background here. I guess I would say what we try to do is just, for the purpose of this webinar, simplify processes and define processes. We broke our unit into 4 different teams, and as you were saying, Ashley, trying to make things, especially for counselors, simple. And so we found that the Capture tool has been very helpful toward that.
And you've been a Capture partner now for a couple years now, Lee. So talk, if you would like to share with the audience how you're using Capture and how you were using it in the last cycle and how that may have changed now going into this year after looking at the data.
Yeah, so every summer we do kind of a staff summer retreat where we take a couple of days and just enjoy one another and breathe and think about the year. So this issue of burnout is a big deal, and also focus is a big deal. So we tried to focus and lessen burnout, I guess you would say. And the way we did that was we thought a lot about our marketing funnel. My son is kind of a whiz of a marketing student here at Grove City, and he actually is a senior this year, but he held forth about 3 hours on the marketing funnel with our whole team. And we got to thinking about the marketing funnel and just the role of counselors and where they fit in the funnel. And for all of you who are in Capture clients, think about this pretty simply. What we thought about: counselors are best at the lower end of the funnel or in the later stages of the marketing process and personal selling. And we realized we probably were asking our counselors to do too much. And so we wanted to get them away from working with inquiries, even app starts. We wanted them just to work where they could really be effective, where their best use of their time were with submitted applications. And even app starts to submitted applications, but nothing up in the inquiry level. So one of the things we had moved away from is, we get these wonderful reports from Capture daily. Capture identified people who are on the site. We honestly stopped using those. And what we relied on, because of this issue of staff burnout and then efficiency, it's like we didn't just say, we're not going to use Capture anymore. We think we're using it smarter. And so we're trying to use Capture at the top of the marketing funnel. Think of, prospects like cold prospects and then inquiries and app starts. We're using all of the electronic things, the toasters and popovers and triggered emails, all that electronic stuff. That's working for us 24/7 behind the scenes to drive prospective students to the app start. And then at the app start, we've got like really 2 specialized people that do use, one in particular, who is using the CAI score to drive them to the app submission. And then what we're doing at the app submission level with a capture and our counselors is we'll identify pockets in there by CAI score where they can work. So it's much simpler, much more refined. And what our counselors are doing is every day we give them, they don't even have to think. We just give them the list by the stage that the student, prospective student is at. We say, do this list, do this list, do this list, do this list, clean your list out. You don't even have to think. The people who are doing the thinking, and one of my colleagues is on here listening, Sarah Nichols, they're the ones working at the top of the funnel, creating those lists, but they're also creating the content, working with our capture partner, Joe Heltzel, to create the content at the right timing, the right audience, and so forth, to intentionally move those people through the funnel. And I would say on Chris's thing, he talked about 4 things: prioritize outreach, capture's great for that; stop burnout, capture's great for that; better way to leverage. I would just say that number 3, better way to leverage. Think a lot about that top part of the funnel where Engaged will work for you 24/7 behind the scenes. And that's where your marketing team, we build a marketing team into our office. The college has a marketing team, but we build a marketing team into the admissions office. I mentioned my colleague, Sarah, she's on, she leads it. And so at that engaged part, the number 4 thing that Chris said, is your comm plan dynamic and engaging enough? That's where our marketing team works, and specifically our marketing team works with capture. And we spend an hour or 2 every day on these things. We spent an hour earlier today just talking about our engaged content there that we work with Joe. And so just like you've got postal comm flow and you've got email comm flow, think about capture and engage at the top there, all that electronic stuff. That's comm flow, stage based as well.
Great. So it sounds like you've taken a different approach within just the past couple of years, Lee, like using the data and doing it differently. So what kind of outcomes have you seen from doing things differently?
Well, yeah, really good question. So what we've seen, really tangibly, is one of the things we wanted to do was get more applications submitted. It's one thing to start an application; it's another thing to submit an application. And that combination, that 4th thing that Chris said, is your communication plan dynamic and engaging enough? Number 3, better way to leverage. We've seen our submission rate go up significantly this year by kind of refocusing, and we've seen a lot less tension among our counselor staff. They actually feel like I can breathe. And consequently, they're cleaning out their lists, and then that's actually freed up time. We're actually working right now 3 capture related lists where they actually have time to do it. And so, yeah, it's helped us a great deal.
What a relief. I can just
Yeah.
feel, as a counselor myself, I can just feel like the weight just, when you feel like something is manageable, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So Lee, my last question to you is, what would you recommend to others that are on the call that are, working with not only a smaller staff, but maybe a newer staff that's turned over? What advice would you share with those particular people on the call today?
Yeah, good question. Number 1, I would say invest time in capture, have a long view, don't be anxious, have kind of a 2, 3, 4-year horizon, stay with it. Also know that while you're doing it, it's really a free service, hint, hint, because we found that capture actually generates prospects for us that that we didn't generate at all, that we had nothing to do with. And so you can afford to take a long view on this, because the way, at least for us, capture pays for itself. And then I would say try to invest as much time as you can in your own data. So be patient, have a long view. I think you can afford to be patient, because our experience is capture pays for itself, and get a better handle on your data. And also, if you've got a marketing team, make them do the work, make them think about the funnel and what works, so you can relieve the counselors to spend their time in that personal selling level.
Great. Well, Lee, thank you so much for this refreshing look at your team's approach to using data this past year. We're so grateful for you as a partner, and we love how passionate and genuine you are. And thank you so much again for taking the time to share with all of us today. We really appreciate it.
Sure, and I would just add that, you know, all of this works. Our applications were up we were up about 25% last year. Our enrollment was up 17%, and you know, captures a big part of that. So, okay, hey, thanks.
Great.
Good to be
Thank
with you
you
guys.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for your time.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, great to be here.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Lee. And so let's take a quick look. I know we're running a little close to time here, so I want to be respectful of everyone on the call. So let's talk a little bit now about what we've learned. One, prioritizing outreach with a small team. Use those scores to focus on those most engaged prospects. Get involvement with the burnout. Communicate the why. Celebrate the outcomes. Set clear expectations, but also make sure that your team is knowledgeable and comfortable with the data. Leverage those tools. Pull in reports as often as you can. Set up an integration if possible. And then, of course, last but not least, is dissecting your data. Let it guide you into creating a more impactful strategy. And just like Lee mentioned, sometimes you may have to pivot and do things differently, but the reward is definitely pays off. So with that being said, let's go to our Q&A. Well, welcome back, Chris. Good to see you. What a great conversation from Lee. I wish we could have talked to him longer.
I absolutely enjoy listening to him talk, and the best part about what's going on in Grove City and things like that is that they've always maintained their focus, and they've always maintained their identity through, you know, thick and thin. Even, you know, back when I was looking at school, because I'm from Western Pennsylvania too, Lee, if you're listening. You know, I actually drove past Grove City the other day on my way home from Erie, PA, back down here to the warmer confines of South Carolina. So, but Sierra's back with us, and we have a couple minutes for some questions. There might not be, I didn't see anything pop in, but I just want to let everybody also know that before we take any questions, that you can join us again on November 13th. We're going to be doing a little bit of a conversation with our friends at Colby Sawyer College. So stay tuned for that. So Q&A.
Okay, so we do actually have one question that was submitted. So if anybody in the audience still has questions to submit, please feel free to do so. So the first question is that this seems to be focused on the pathway from high school to undergraduate. Do these insights hold for the graduate population, specifically graduate management education?
Great question. I'll take this first, Chris, but you're welcome to chime in too. But
I'll keep my mouth quiet. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say absolutely. Of course, you know, graduate admissions is a little bit different of a beast, right? Especially if you know, whether you're centralized or have a decentralized office, it can be a little bit different from a process perspective. But we do have graduate partners, undergrad partners, and then transfer online. We even have some high school population partners. So it's definitely something that that your graduate teams can use too, especially too, because a lot of our graduate partners have those smaller teams, right, Chris?
Yeah, and the other thing too is to remember, and we just got off the conversation. I've had 3 or 4 conversations with grad partners or prospective grad partners within the last week. And the one thing that is very evident is that we're seeing in the grad pool where, you know, Common App is at the undergrad has really taken off again this year. We've taught our students who are in school to do research before they apply to school. So they're applying to 2, maybe 3 different graduate schools instead of 6 or 7 undergraduate schools. So the ability of Engage to be able to identify those students in your pool who are visiting your website or interacting with your dynamic content is even more powerful for your counseling staff, because the counseling staff is, again, like you said, Ashley, decentralized. There's like one person or a faculty member that's making those phone calls. To be able to say that, you know, Sierra was on the website last night, and we can reach back out to her today with important messaging that's important to her is really important in that recruitment and cultivation process. So absolutely, the graduate level would take great advantage of this.
Okay, Okay, great. That is all the questions that we have for today. So I will go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you again for joining us for another insightful CaptureCast webinar. Thank you to Lee, Ashley, and Chris. Just as a reminder, anyone that attended today's session will be receiving an email tomorrow afternoon with a webinar recording. And that's it from us today. So have a great afternoon.